Welcome to Unofficial Canon, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Tavin.
I'm Brendan.
And we are continuing our very long-winded conversation about The Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Brendan, how are you feeling?
Confused.
I'm feeling tired.
I think confusion and exhaustion sum up the movie well, and also how, as a watcher, I feel at this stage of the movie.
Yes. Well, and listeners who were listening to our last episode probably got that sense because we were getting lost. This is really the point where the movie just loses people.
You know, and I don't know if I said this on the podcast or not, but it is one of the notes I had where I said this movie is off the rails on Naboo, but on Tatooine and Coruscant things kind of come together. I think, upon further reflection, what I mean by that is this movie is off the rails at Naboo, and then by the time we get to Tatooine and Coruscant, I've just mentally checked out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Definitely have a hard time, but we took a little break.
We did.
We returned to the film. Well,
Yes.
I did. I rewatched the last third of the film last night.
You're a
And,
braver man than I.
yeah, I rewrote all my notes to ensure.
We have a roadmap now.
Now we know where we're going, so we're gonna continue on. So last time the Jedi had just fought Darth Maul, and they were blasting off Tatooine, headed to Coruscant. But before we get to Coruscant, we have our little scene back on Naboo, where the Viceroy is talking to the governor, and it's basically like, "I'm gonna murder you,"
Yeah.
and the governor's like, "Okay." Like there's not much more to that scene other than vague threats. And then the only other note I have is that the Viceroy is riding a spider chair. It's like a chair with like spider legs,
Yeah.
which is very reminiscent of, if you've watched the Clone Wars TV show, the Hutts have these kind of chairs with the spider legs.
Right. Yeah.
Because someone had the brilliant idea of like, wait, how did this slug race rule the outer rim without technology?
And the answer is spider leg hover rounds, basically.
It's the only answer.
Well, and in the Clone Wars, to continue this slight detour, Darth Maul gets spider legs.
Yes.
So there's a
Somehow.
there's a trend in the prequels with spider legs.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
I think it's CG. It's easier to do.
Spider legs look awesome in CG. That was George's. Well, maybe it's like a callback to the kind of the old Flash Gordon, like giant spider or something like
yeah,
that. Right?
could be.
I feel like that's too smart.
Well, maybe in Return of the Jedi, when they're in Jabba's palace and they've got that brain in a jar that's in like a spider robot, maybe Lucas really, really liked that, and he was just like, Star Wars needs more mecha spiders.
This is slowly becoming Kevin Smith's rant about doing the first right of the Death of Superman script, where just giant spiders are needed everywhere.
Absolutely.
Maybe that producer had something to do with Star Wars at some point.
Hey, he's like, yeah, I didn't get Superman, but I got my spider legs.
Who can I don't know. I don't think anyone knows, nor does anyone care.
No, let's follow the roadmap.
So the other thing that I just want to point out is that in this scene that there's some Roger robots in the background, and they look like all the robots do in this movie, quite good. They're composited in nicely. The lighting is good on them.
Yeah.
And I just want to share that in contrast for the next scene, because we go back to the ship, and Jar Jar is napping in the lower levels.
Oh, yes.
And Padme comes in, and she watches one of the holopleas from the governor of Naboo, who's like, the death toll is catastrophic.
Yeah, to come contact me or whatever it is.
Yeah. And I mentioned this in an earlier episode, but all of the holograms are just like, they really just look like flat layers. Like someone just bad fan film After Effects work on all the holograms in these movies.
It's probably because they were focused on the robots.
Probably. That and the fact that they, George Lucas is such a pioneer of filmmaking. He had no one knew how to do this. He just invented it. Him personally invented all the processes in this movie.
100% of them.
Anyway, so yeah, Padme gets worried after this, and then she notices little orphan Annie shivering in the corner because it's cold in space, which you're like, okay, yeah, you're from a warm planet. That makes sense. Then my question is, why has no other character in Star Wars ever been cold when they leave a warm planet?
That's true.
Chronologically speaking, this is the first of 3 characters to come from warm planets and leave them.
I guess maybe. So Anakin's a slave, so he probably didn't have air conditioning. But Luke is a farm boy, so he probably had air conditioning. And then I would guess Rey lived in an AT-AT, right? So, or AT-AT, or AT-AT, whatever. I'll probably interchange those through each episode. And so that probably had climate control?
I'm going to say no. But you do have me thinking. It could be possible.
I don't know why I'm defending Phantom Menace at this level.
Yes, Tatooine is a desert planet, but like the cities don't seem to be like in the legit middle of the desert.
Right.
But Rey legitimately lives in the middle of the desert. And if you know anything about deserts, they get cold at night.
They do. So
she might be used to the kind of changing temperatures because the Force keeps her warm. I don't know. Anyway, they're getting off the rails for Phantom Menace here.
Before we went down into the temperature debate, this is another point where I was like, why did Lucas want to start the romance here?
Yeah, this is the most blatant scene.
Because it's the creepiest.
This is the most blatant scene in the movie where they're like clearly flirting.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, perhaps the innocent heart of a child, the one that George Lucas, has in his cupboard in a jar, maybe that told him that, it's fine. It's just like when Padme says she'll never forget him and she'll never stop caring for him, maybe she's just talking almost like a sisterly kind of bond kind of thing, right? At that point. But it does not come off like it comes off like really awkward romance because it's between a 9-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Exactly.
The other thing that we should take note, and this is going to be the long haul reference, is that Anakin gives her some kind of necklace, and it's made out of some kind of root. And I literally rewound 30 seconds 5 times in a row trying to hear what Anakin was what kind of root it was. I couldn't.
We never found out.
I didn't feel like it was important enough to Wikipedia or anything like that. Plus, I kind of feel like Wikipedia is cheating. We have our Bible, we have our Star Wars Bible.
Yeah.
And that's if it's not in there, it's not canon.
Then it's not canon,
according to me. But
I support you in this.
Anyway, so they flirt, and then we arrive at Coruscant, and we have some big wide shots of the ship speeding towards the planet, and it's all nothing but lights, kind of like from an airplane when you see a city. Thus telling us that this is a giant city planet.
Yes.
Yeah, the captain provides the exposition. He quite literally says, for no reason really, yeah, Coruscant, the whole planet is a city. And look, down there, Chancellor Valorum's shuttle, and Palpatine's waiting for us. Which is, there's no sin against that. It's fine. We need that. We need to know who these people are. But it's still
the throwaway line of this planet's a city, fine. We need to establish that for all the people who didn't get into the EU before this movie came out.
The 12-year-olds.
Right. Because this is a movie for kids. But why not just land and have Palpatine go up and be like, I'm Senator Palpatine. Here's Chancellor Valorum. Because that's
well, he does that. That literally quite happens too.
You see what I mean about me checking out mentally at this stage of the movie? It was all just pretty colors.
George Lucas just wants things said 2 or 3 times to make sure we got it, okay?
I guess it is a movie for kids, so that's acceptable.
So yes, they land, and then we have a 30-second sequence where no one says anything, and they just kind of embark off the ship and walk together. And then they stand there for a few seconds awkwardly, and then Palpatine's like, Queen Amidala, may I present to you Chancellor Valorum? And she's like, she's Queen Amidala about it.
Yeah.
She's like, thank you. No emotion at all in her voice. I do have a note here that Valorum looks like the kind of guy who is super into, and I'm using air quotation marks here, traditional marriage, but also has a red room in his basement.
He did give off a little bit of a vibe like that. The kind of, but I mean, it's that kind of greasy politician vibe,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Well, and this was also, we quickly touched on it. We won't go too far into it again, but like George Lucas was heavily inspired by the politics of the time. So this was like right at the beginning of the George Bush era. So, but I don't know what that really means, but in the context of this, but now you know.
Yeah. So was Valorum Clinton then?
Maybe. And that kind of works with my,
Red Room
talk, right?
Okay, well that's going in my head canon, and that's official now. Valorum is the Bill Clinton of Star Wars.
And then Palpatine is the George Bush.
Yeah, that's a tough comparison because he's effective.
That's very that's very true. So yeah, and then Queen Amidala, Padme, and all the like handmaidens go with Palpatine. Jar Jar goes with them, which at this point I was reminded of, like, why is Jar Jar still with us?
Because they couldn't leave him on Tatooine.
Well, and it's like, why? So here's my biggest question now: is the Jedi were the people who are like, okay, Jar Jar's coming with us, right? So why would he then go with Padme and the Queen at this point? Other than the fact that he's technically from Naboo.
I think the Jedi were just sick of him.
I think so. I think they're also sick of Anakin because for no real reason, like, Anakin goes with Padme. Like, she kind of like beckons him, like, come on, Anakin. And then like Anakin like turns around to check with his mom, Qui-Gon Jinn, his new space mom, his space Jedi mom.
Qui-Gon Jinn's space mom.
And he's like, yeah, just go. Like,
just get out of here, kid.
Yeah, and like the motion he makes with his hand is literally like, go, get out of here. Like someone banishing old Yeller to the forest or something.
Well, I mean, to give Qui-Gon the benefit here, right? Him and Obi-Wan left to conduct trade negotiations. And now it's been a bit of a trip, and he's got a new pet dumb lizard and a child. I'd want to send them away too and just be like, I got to figure out what direction I'm taking my Jedi life in now. Like,
the living force is taking me some strange places, man, and I'm scared. No, but they tell Valorum that, like, we have to go talk to the Jedi Council right away. Because I guess at this point, Valorum is kind of their boss. Like, Valorum was the one who sent them.
Right.
Originally.
Yeah.
To deal with this. So yeah, everyone separates for good reasons, but the groupings are strange is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So the next scene, we are in Palpatine's apartment. And the movie doesn't really tell us where this is. I'm calling it Palpatine's apartment because that's what the book calls it.
And Terry Brooks knows his shit, so.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, they're at Palpatine's apartment. The Queen is now Padme. Padme is now the Queen.
Right, so that swap has officially occurred.
Yes, and the only real, well, again, at this point, we're not supposed to know.
Right.
But the small hint for second, third time viewers is that she's wearing a new outfit, which insinuates that they've had time to swap.
Right.
Right? So this whole scene just boils down basically to Palpatine telling that the Queen of the Republic is broken.
Basically, yeah. And then he's like, what we need to do is elect a strong chancellor. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Well, yeah, he's definitely like, he's being very manipulative.
Yeah.
And I don't know how no one else knows in the scene, because as an audience member, I'm like, I think you want something. Like, he's basically in this scene, he's like, well, I fear they're not going to do anything, but, you could call for a vote.
Yeah, he's like, you could call for a vote of no confidence, which, like, I'm a big political nerd. And it's like, that's an extreme step to be like, all right, well, because these trade things are going wrong. And all the chancellors, he's just like, well, all we've got is your story that this is going on. And the Trade Federation are like, they're saying nothing's wrong. Let's just go investigate. And then they're like, no, you can't investigate.
We gotta act now.
We gotta act now. I don't have confidence in your leadership. And then what blows me away as a political nerd is like, this is successful? The Galactic Senate is like, oh, yes, I don't have confidence.
We're jumping ahead, but I would say that that's because... No, because it's really hard to talk about one part of the story, the political aspect, without talking about all of it. But I'd say part of it is because Palpatine has manipulated this whole situation into fruition. But jumping back a little bit, back to our scene. He says, you can basically, Valorum is ruled by the bureaucrats.
Right.
Which is like, okay, bureaucrats is a word that is political. I'll put that in my script. And
again, this movie is for 12-year-olds.
It's for 12-year-olds. So yeah, he pushes for the idea that they do vote of no confidence, and the Queen is like, it's basically your reaction, like, seriously, it's come this far, and he's like, well, we could send it to the courts, and like immediately she's like, the courts take forever,
right?
Which then the universal truth for both our universe and the Star Wars universe is consistent, where courts take forever to do anything.
Yeah.
You don't want to send things to the courts. You want to do it outside of there.
If they'd gone with the courts, Attack of the Clones would have happened and Luke would have been 40.
Yeah.
So
this scene just kind of ends.
Well, but it leaves that nugget.
Yeah, it's like it's planting the seeds of Palpatine's plan, and it just kind of ends there. The only other note that I have for this scene is that I think there's something cut in here involving Jar Jar and Anakin, and they obviously removed it because in the background you can see like Anakin kind of like pull Jar Jar off somewhere, and I was sure it's going to be some stupid adventure between the two of them.
So we missed out on a Little Orphan Annie and Jar Jar adventure?
Yeah. I guess George Lucas realized I went a little too far here, and he could actually cut it out without destroying the movie's plot. So
I want to see Phantom Menace Special Edition.
I'm sure there might be a deleted scene of it.
Oh, I'll have to go digging.
That's technically not canon.
No, can't.
Although it is interesting to talk about George's original intent versus what we actually got.
Yes.
We go to the Jedi Temple.
Right. So, and this is the first time we've seen the Jedi Temple, really.
The first time, it's basically like 4 towers.
Yeah.
It's like a rectangle, so you got one in each corner, and then one that's slightly taller than the 4 corners in the middle. And then we cut inside, which I'm guessing is the middle temple, or the middle tower, sorry. And the Jedi are convening in their creepy circle of doom. And when I read the book before I rewatched the movie, and so my note from the book was like, everyone comes off like a dick in this scene. Like everyone, especially the Jedi Council.
And I can't decide if that was a conscious decision or if it's just poor writing, poor directing.
Well,
because if it's a conscious decision, like that gets layered through 2 more movies and a 6-season cartoon series where ultimately it starts to make the galaxy feel more sensical, but I can't tell if that's just, retconning.
Yeah, it's hard to say because like a lot of it would be interesting to do a podcast in 1989 if that was a thing, because to talk about this movie without the context of everything else would be interesting, because obviously in the Clone Wars show they tried to justify and fix things, right? And they've done that in a certain amount of the books. So like I look at the Jedi Council now as corrupt as the Republic itself. Like that system is broken in this. Like Palpatine is using it to his advantage, and it's possible that he's pushed things off screen to be broken. But the reality is that it is broken. The fact that the Jedi Order is an order, it breaks the concept of the Jedi for me.
Absolutely.
Because like the Sith are about control and order. And so the very concept of like, okay, let's all get together and have a council and let's make decisions based on a code and not have any wiggle room for like change based on what the living force is telling us breaks the Jedi. And
absolutely.
That's their ultimate undoing. So like this is why like the Clone Wars show makes the prequels a little bit smarter. It is the story of how the Jedi go to their downfall, basically. Right. The only thing that I wish, and I don't want to say, oh, here's how I would do it, but it would be nice. Maybe Rian Johnson's trilogy or whatever we're going to get we'll talk about the before time. Like, I want to see the Jedi actually in their prime.
Yeah.
I want to see how it is supposed to be before you show me how things fell apart. Anyway, okay, so that's our side tangent for this episode. I'm sure there'll only be 6 more. Qui-Gon believes that Maul was a Sith Lord, and everyone is like, what? Like, no one can believe this. And specifically because the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, so 1,000 years.
Right.
Which, again, weird time frames that were thrown out in Star Wars, right? Which is another big...
As is tradition, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, Alec Guinness said the Jedi were around for 1,000 generations, and then that became 1,000 years.
Right.
And then I think there's some point Palpatine says the Republic has stood for several thousand years, so it's... I don't know.
It's hazy history.
And I guess when it's been that long... that would make sense, especially in a universe where in the span of 19 years, people don't know what the Force or the Jedi are anymore.
Yeah, that's that's a spectacular cleaning. Although I'm excited to talk about that when we get there 70 years from now.
And again, the comic books have been doing their best to fix stuff like that. Anyway, so yeah, they're all like, oh, maybe it is, I don't know. And so I believe it's Mace Windu says, we will use all our resources to uncover the truth of your attacker. That's fairly close. If not, I have it in quotation marks, and usually when that's in quotation marks, that means
that's a quote.
That's a quote. So just take a small little note of that for later, because it's going to be important. So then, like, Obi-Wan thinks that they're done and starts to walk away. And Qui-Gon, like a dick, doesn't tell him what's going on.
Yeah.
And you think that, like, at the same time, Obi-Wan might have cued in. Like, we brought this boy from Tatooine, and, like, you think he's special, and you had me measure his midichlorians.
And they're off the charts.
Are we not going to talk to the council about this? Or are we just going to, like...
just going to keep that a little secret.
We're just going to leave Anakin... We're going to hide Anakin in a closet and bring him out occasionally and, like... This is Blanakin. He's been the Jedi Order for a while. Here, Master Yoda, train him. Don't look inside him. There's no anger in him at all.
None.
So yeah, Qui-Gon just kind of stands there. And this is the point where the Jedi Council goes full dick. Like, Yoda himself is like, they're talking about, they found this boy. He's a virgin in the Force. And then, like, Mace Windu's like, you believe him to be the chosen one, and Qui-Gon's like, well, his midichlorian, and then Yoda's like, he's like, no, shut up, that's what you mean. Revealed is your opinion, and it's just like, if I was Qui-Gon, I'd literally put my hands up and be like, whoa, dude, whoa, did your girlfriend break up with you or something today? Like, calm down, man. But yes, I do. There's heavy sighing throughout the whole room, and then Mace Windu's like, "Okay, we'll test this boy."
Right, but at some point in this conversation, and this is one of the few moments where my brain forced me to pay attention, because he was like, "He'll fail the tests. He's too old.
He's too old.
He's too old for the tests."
Yeah.
And then when you see what the tests are, you're like, is he really too old for this?
Well, and again, yeah, we'll get to that when we get to
get to that. But it's just like Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi come back from their trade negotiations with Gungan and the Chosen One, and the Jedi Council are like, what's their plan if this is the Chosen One? And they're like, no, he's too old. We'll just... What? Hook him up with a job at Dexter Jetsters and, like, washing dishes? Like, what? Like, what's their plan to do with this thing that's got more midichlorians than Yoda? And why?
Well, because, normally if you don't train someone, they're just, like, really good athletes, I guess. Unless they have a...
So they're just going to send Anakin back to the pod racing circuit. Just be like, no, you're in the core world circuit now. You don't have to worry about dying as much.
Well, that's probably what would have happened, I think, because Anakin wouldn't... Well, I don't know. We can talk about that. Like, if there was a point where, like, Qui-Gon literally couldn't train him at all.
Right.
But it's interesting Qui-Gon's reaction to them saying he can't train them, and then their reaction to that. And I think it opens a lot of, like, question marks about how the Jedi Order actually works. But we'll get there. So yes, they're like, yeah, bring the boy. We get the wipe to the next scene, and we're back at Palpy's apartment. Anakin is looking for Padme,
Mm-hmm.
and they let him. They just like, well, I guess no. The guard's like, "There's the boys here to see Padme," and then the door opens. I guess they said they could come in, but I put a note like, "Wait, they're like clearly still dressing in here, like they're like picking out clothes." But I guess they were like, "No one's naked. It's fine."
Yeah, it's fine. Have you seen the way she's looked at him anyway? Bring him in. She'll like it.
Oh, that's the worst. Anyway, so yeah, he comes in and the queen is like, "I sent Padme away on an errand, but I'll tell her the message." And he's like, "I'm going to go do the tests at the Jedi Council."
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm sure her heart will be with you." This is Padme talking, if you didn't get that.
Exactly.
Guys, I don't know if you realize this might be a spoiler, but Queen Amidala is Padme. It's kind of a big reveal later on, but just to save confusion, I thought I should say that. What are we, like 9 episodes into Phantom Menace now? So if you didn't get that,
then you know what? This movie was written for you.
we're still not quite sure who this mysterious Phantom Menace is yet, but we're getting there.
We're digging in.
We're going to figure that out. Anyway, so that's basically the scene. There's nothing special than that. The only other note I have is that there's like, there's some very provocative art for Star Wars in this scene. There's like just a statue of like a naked woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you'll never see that in the Disney Star Wars movies.
No titties. You might still get that opera scene, though.
You think you would get that? We'll get to
Well,
that.
I mean, you won't get it, but for different reasons.
I have the actual quote from Padme's line. "We will tell her for you. We're sure her heart goes with you." So yeah, it was basically what I said. Anyway, we then cut to the giant mushroom, a.k.a. the Senate building.
Right.
And then basically everything that Palpatine said happens.
Yeah.
Like literally everything.
It's almost like he can see into the future.
So to sum all that up, Brendan, why don't you take us through the political joys of Phantom Menace?
Oh my God. Well, I don't know if I can, because it's like, so.
I'll help you.
Yeah.
I'll be your guide. I'll tell you when
Be
you're,
my
when you're
Obi-Wan
wrong.
Kenobi. They try, like the Queen of Naboo comes out and is like, this is a big deal. Something bad's happening on the planet. Apparently, millions of people are dying. Why doesn't the Republic do anything? And then the Trade Federation comes floating along and they're like, no. And so then Valorum is like, well, we got to check on the validity of these statements. We should go check that out. And then I think Amidala or maybe Sheev or Palpatine steps up at this point and is like, no, we can't do that. No, it's definitely Amidala because she's the one who calls for a vote of no confidence.
Do you need a little help?
Yes.
Okay, so you're this is confusing. So, yes, you're basically there. So, to go in a little more detail, the Chancellor grants Naboo the grounds to talk.
Okay.
And their little ship thing floats out of the center.
Yeah.
And Palpatine's like, this is bad things happening on Naboo. This is Queen Amidala. She'll tell you all about it. And Queen Amidala's like, yeah, the Trade Federation is killing all the people.
Right.
And the Trade Federation is like, what are you talking about? This is insanity. And then they're told to shut up, but they don't.
Right.
And they actually suggest that.
Oh, it's the Trade Federation who suggests.
Yes, and then
someone
there's a
goes to
second planet.
investigate?
Yeah, and there's a secondary planet that like seconds it. And then the bureaucrats talk to the Chancellor Valorum, and that's
Right.
when Palpatine kind of like slithers around her ear and is like, this is where Chancellor Valorum will lose his strength. The bureaucrats, who are, by the way, on the payroll of the Trade Federation, control him.
Yeah.
And she looks all worried and sad. And then she does the no vote thing.
The vote of no confidence.
Yeah, exactly.
Which gets seconded.
It gets like,
Because like people, because it happens.
well, like half the Senate seems to be for it, and then half the Senate seems to be against it.
Yeah.
But I guess they just immediately know that there's enough support to like call for a vote of no confidence because like it becomes a thing. There's no scene where it's like they tally up the votes for the vote.
Right. And I mean,
And they're like, okay, let's do the vote.
I can understand that would not be thrilling watching for 12-year-olds.
Yeah. So
But it's still like Can you do that anytime?
I guess so.
Like, could Jar Jar just go out there and be like, Dello Feligits, Misa think Sheev a big bomba bad man.
Well, I think you just need support. That's all, right?
Oh,
and like,
yeah.
The feeling is that there is enough support for it.
Okay.
So whether that
we'll let it go.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna. I can't help you there.
Politically, structurally, this institution should not have lasted 1,000 years or 1,000 generations.
There's no way I can help you there. So we'll just move on.
Let's move on.
So yeah, and Palpatine is like constantly like kind of slithering to her ear. That's what he does. And yeah, so there's gonna be a vote, I guess. And yeah, that's that scene. Where are we now? See, we've lost ourselves and
we have a map this time.
Oh, here we go. Meanwhile, somewhere, which I later realized is the Jedi Temple.
Oh, is this with Annie's test?
No, this is a short little scene between Obi-Wan and Liam Neeson. And it's basically just Obi-Wan disagrees with him about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically calls out a few things that are interesting to note. The fact that Qui-Gon, if he had just followed the code, he would be on the council by now.
Right.
So we're establishing that Qui-Gon is a bit of a rebel when it comes to
the way the Jedi work.
And yeah, that's basically all this scene does. And then Qui-Gon's just like, nah, man, Obi-Wan, I know what I'm doing.
It's fine.
He basically just says, I have to follow my heart. Then we cut back to the Jedi Council. Mace Windu is holding one of these iPads.
Yeah, but with a stick.
Because
he's fancy.
So George Lucas also invented the selfie stick. Yeah, exactly.
What a visionary.
Such a visionary. Yeah, and it's just like Anakin's doing like the poor man's psychic trick where he's guessing
pictures.
Speeder, blaster. We don't know how long he's been doing this for. Like he could have been doing 50 of them. Could have been doing like 6. And then they just stop. And then like they start asking him questions.
Yeah.
And it's kind of insinuated in the movie that like they're looking kind of into him, right? Because they're like, we sense anger in you. In the book, it goes into more detail about how this feels from Anakin's perspective. And it's just, apparently it's very uncomfortable being like penetrated by the sights of 12 different Jedi.
That does not surprise me in the slightest. But I bet the Jedi are enjoying themselves.
They feel very superior. They feel very like, oh, well, you know, there's much anger in you, so you can't be a Jedi.
Yeah. Too mad. Because your mom's still enslaved.
Yeah, which is totally like, this is a 9-year-old kid. First of all, they ask him, like, how do you feel? And he's like, I'm cold.
Mm-hmm.
So he's still bloody cold. No one was like, Qui-Gon wasn't like, let's get this kid a sweater. Like, right? Nobody was like, let's get him some new clothes. He still was wearing Desert Planet clothes. And then they're like, how do you feel about your mom, who's still a slave? And you'll never see her again.
This is what I mean. The Jedi are jerks.
Jedi apparently also have no social etiquette.
Because, like, imagine if his answer was, oh, I'm fine with that. Like, that's more concerning.
I don't. Yeah. So anyway, so Yoda gives them like a little mini lesson here about fear and how fear leads to the dark side. And there's the very famous quote that everyone's like, this is silly.
Yes.
Because it's a path. Yoda sets out this path of emotion, which is fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering.
Yes.
Which is ridiculous because like all those things are interchangeable. Like you could say that fear leads to fear is suffering to a certain extent.
And that suffering leads to hate.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
yeah,
circular. So why would you say that it's a kind of a straight line? Unless specifically, the only way that would really work is if you mirrored that perfectly in Anakin's story moving forward, and it like George gets close to doing that, but not close enough.
I think it was just he needed to write some Yoda words. So he wrote some Yoda words.
Yeah.
And then that philosophy behind it doesn't matter.
Well, and here's the interesting thing. I wonder if Frank Oz changed them. Because the book, it's actually not that.
No.
It's to the dark side, fear leads to anger and to hate, to suffering. It's more like fear leads to anger and hate and suffering.
suffering.
So those things all have a relationship to each other, right? It's like, okay, I can get more behind that. So I'm wondering if like Frank Oz was just like, oh, that's not Yoda-y enough.
Yeah. That could be.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
either way, I think we're probably at our episode limit.
We definitely are, but I do just want to say one thing before we go. It's just that Yoda is like, in this movie, he's the worst.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait till we get to Clone Wars and kind of talk about Yoda growing as a character, because I think that's one of the neatest things that the Clone Wars does is it takes like this master character that we've put on a pedestal and kind of like breaks him down, and we see an arc.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, where he's at Phantom Menace, he's just a
Because I will say this, and this is one memory that I have as a kid, is that every time I saw a prequel movie for the first time, it felt like it killed Yoda a bit more each movie. There's definitely a lot of that. Because Yoda's supposed to be wise and... Ugh, not going to get into that now.
No, you feel like Yoda should be the one like supporting for the training of the kid.
Yoda should be Qui-Gon Jinn.
Or at least
mentally.
more on Qui-Gon Jinn's side.
Yeah.
Based on what we saw in
Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Yes. But a character who's 600 years old, 19 years, you can change a lot in those 19 years.
It's true.
Okay. Well, yes, I think we're way beyond. You guys got a special little extra packed episode here.
Thank you for sticking around.
This is what happens when we take a break. Get some more energy. So yes, thank you for tuning in. Next week we will continue this conversation. Thanks for listening.